Hello and welcome to Startup Gippsland Live, a place where both budding and established regional founders can feel right at home. We're here to inspire you to take the path less travelled, to make your idea a reality, and most of all, to hone your entrepreneurial skills so that you can grow and scale your business and realise your potential. Get ready for this episode of Startup Gippsland Live. Now here's your host, Zoe Doyle.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Startup Gippsland Live. I'm your host, Zoe Doyle, and today I'm talking to the powerhouse that is Kerryn Vaughan about overcoming failure and finding courage as an entrepreneur. Kerryn is an international speaker and author, facilitator, and podcast host. In 2018, she launched Girls with Hammers, which hosts conferences and workshops aimed at empowering and connecting women. And in 2019, released her second book, Get Off the Bench, to help people bring their ideas to life. It was here that her own podcast, Get Off the Bench, was also born. Kerryn has presented keynotes and workshops at numerous events and conferences, both in Australia and internationally, to help people kickstart their ideas and discover what lies on the other side of possibility. Her energy is absolutely contagious, and I'm so excited for what is set to be an adventure over the course of this episode. Kerryn, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much, Zoe. Thanks for having me. You make me sound like I'm a very busy person. I think I'm just busy chasing my own tail.
Well, you are a very busy person, Kerryn, absolutely. So let's dive in, because we have a lot of fantastic questions to cover today, and I'm just so thrilled to have you. So Kerryn, you're a podcast host yourself, a speaker, author, and change maker, of course. Your determination to make the world a better place is inspiring. I would love to know, where did this passion come from?
I think when I was born, I was like, my mum had to put me in hospital when I was 1 because I had too much energy. So I think that, all my life, I perhaps channeled it into the wrong areas. And, and I was living the rock star life, and I was an absolute, some people even called me Spitfire, because I was just so on and so energetic. But I think that I was probably being a little destructive, and a little bit selfish. But in my late 30s or mid 30s, my sister, second youngest sister, got cancer. And I was kind of like, I just saw the death sentence, and I didn't see that it could be curable, and a lot of people recover. So me being the oldest in the family, I took on this kind of, always had it actually, that this protector sort of persona, and it was my duty to keep her alive. And the truth is I failed, which I didn't really fail, but I guess this is one of my hardest lessons about failure, is that I saw that as a failure. I couldn't save her. So I kind of, I ended up hiding. I went and got a job in a nursery, and so this took 5 years, 5 years of me trying to save a life, and it didn't work. And so I thought I'd go and work in a nursery, and because I can hide behind the plants, no one can see this failure of a person, and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't last very long. I ended up locking the boss in the shed, and my energy just sort of exploded. But what happened was the community asked me to be a part of Relay for Life. And so I took on 3 roles. I overcompensated, and it was such a success. And, people were saying to me things like, oh man, what a successful job, what a great job you did. And it wasn't about the praise that really got me, but what it was this recognition that I had the power within me to make a difference to society, to my community. And then it sort of grew from there, and the recognition that I had the power to change anything in the world. Not anything, but I had power that I never knew I had. And once I started channeling that in the right direction, so that was nearly 20 years ago, and I just haven't stopped. I'm so passionate about making positive change, and I love the planet. I love animals. I love humanity. And why wouldn't we do something? Why wouldn't we do something? So I just want to leave a legacy, and I care to plant the tree of the shade I'll never get to sit under. I care about that. So, so it's adversity and apparent failure can really if we harness it the right way, can really make a difference. Really can.
How hard was it, Kerryn, to change those beliefs from seeing yourself as a failure to actually believing in yourself and seeing that you did have the potential to make great impacts on the world?
I think that was incremental. That had to be like demonstrated, and I had to see it step by step. And I think that we have a bit of a gung-ho attitude about mindset. Well, I'll just change my mindset and I'll just be, positive thinking. But you can't just switch like that. Like, there's a lot of little steps that you have to go through, and it's sort of one success makes you realize, I can do it. And then that builds your confidence to take the next step. And then there's another success, and it just kind of builds. And don't get me wrong, don't think that I've overcome, I love failure. I think it's a great learning. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, because there's other stories I want to share. But at the end of the day, I still fear failure, even though I love it, because none of us want to fail. We just kind of think, damn, I just want to get it right. But I think we've got to be friends with it, and we just have to accept it's part of life. And if we didn't have a life of ups and downs and goods and bads and ins and outs, we wouldn't be living. We wouldn't. So it's the journey we have to love.
That's so true. Thank you. I love that.
Thanks.
So, Kerryn, you're the author of Get Off the Bench, and you help people to take the first step in achieving their goals. What do you feel holds people back the most when it comes to kickstarting their business or startup? Like, where do they get stuck?
Yeah. The overarching thing that I've seen is it's kind of, they label it as lack of confidence. I just don't have the confidence, that sort of stuff, which is now launched to me. I'm just now launching a big confidence program, because I'm so, it breaks my heart seeing it over and over and over and over. But underlying that, I've come to realize that there are 5 things that, because when I say what's stopping you, people say time and money. They always say that, but underneath there's this whole lot of layers, and it's self-doubt, imposter syndrome, not knowing where to start, overwhelmed by the big picture, and fear of failure, criticism, rejection, all those things. So they don't get started, and I know it sounds a little cliche or something, but it breaks my heart, because every single person in this world is magnificent. They are born with just such there's such unique set of qualities. And don't worry, I don't think I'm perfect, and I fall into the trap all the time, of believing that that this is too hard or stuff, and I've got to do a lot of work each time, to pull myself out of that space. But it's such a tragedy when every single person in this world is here to contribute something, and they're not doing it because of fear or self-doubt. And they're all stories, and I know they feel real. They feel real to me as well when I experience them, but they're just stories, and it's a tragedy. It really is.
Yeah. Still today, through my role at Startup Gippsland, see this, and through my businesses have seen that, people present with one symptom of their problem, which they always say is time or money, or, but it really is so much about what you're thinking up here, and how you feel about yourself. And that's what they have to sort of make that connection to be able to make that change. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And it's not an easy change. It's not, it takes a lot of, as I said, you can't just say to someone, think positively. It doesn't work. Little changes, little bits of evidence. And before they know it, it's like, I can do this, So that's what I try to help people with. But, some still don't move.
I think it's setting the expectation too that there's no silver bullet, and it's not something that is going to happen overnight, because we're all creatures of habit, and it takes months to form these new habits and connections in our brain. And we could talk about this for hours, Kerryn. So something we see amongst many startup founders is fear of failure, which we've just been discussing. So what tips would you give to founders who are struggling with this? And could you share some of your own failures and what you've learned from them? Because I know you've got some pretty epic failures yourself.
I think that the first thing is, I think that we've got to reframe the word failure and just failure equals feedback, so that we just sort of take us out of the equation, because what we always do is we always think it's about me, that they don't like me, somebody didn't buy it because of me, or this kind of stuff. We really personalize failure. So I reckon the first thing we'll do is stop personalizing failure and just call it feedback. Okay, so that didn't work, and that's feedback, and now I can change it. And any good entrepreneur, and I don't mean that, I don't want to let people decide whether they're good or bad and put themselves into little posies, but entrepreneurs that do make it, they celebrate failure as learning opportunities, and they really, really look for these things that break down so that they can get better. So it's a really good opportunity. As for me, and the other thing is too, we all fail. Like, it's just part of life. And as I said before, if we didn't have ups and downs and ins and outs and goods and bads, we wouldn't be living. There's no such thing as a perfect life and just all success. And there's no such funny thing unless you live in a bubble. And I don't know anyone who does. As for me, I when I started One Planet Classroom, so I wrote the book Magnificent Kids, and a guy in Africa saw it and said, I want to start a magnificent class. And I sent him the book, and I said, I'll Skype with you. And I said, some kids in the book can Skype. And I had this brilliant idea that why don't we get your kids in Africa to Skype with our kids in Australia in the schools, and they can do pen pal, but by Skype, and really learn about each other, because I see the big gap is why we have poverty there and not here and stuff like it's ignorance, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just we don't know, and if we're not connected to people that are suffering this poverty, and if we were connected, we'd start to come up with ideas of how can I help that person, what do I know here that I could share. And then also with the African people would be giving us a sense of empathy instead of stop living in our first world problems, that sort of stuff. So I thought it was great. Anyway, long story short, I ended up sending, I didn't have any laptops. I got some off from friends on Facebook. I sent them over, took me months. I thought I was doing a wonderful job, and I had 45 schools waiting for me to do this. Got the laptops into Uganda, and then realised, wait, the kids in Uganda, the kids there are in bed when the kids in Australia are awake. And I was kind of like, oh, I could have thought about that 10 months ago. Time zones just didn't cross my mind. And then the other thing was too, I sent laptops to a country where 95% of them don't even have power. So I had this great idea that was kind of like completely ignorant, as in, I didn't even check about power because I took it for granted. We've got it here. Well, this is a great idea. So it was a complete disaster, and it was never going to work for many logistical reasons. And even to charge their laptop, they had to take it into the market, into the town, and sit there for 24 hours next to it while it trickle fed. Hey, you can't do that. Like, who's got time while you're supposed to be teaching? So we ended up putting solar systems in, and it just ended up, quite a logistical nightmare. But what I found out in that time is that girls were collecting water, and the girls were being sexually assaulted and raped even as young as 3, while they were getting water. The girls are also taken out of school to go fetch the water. It's their job. And they're drinking it, they're collecting it out of stagnant, dirty ponds that animals are peeing in, that men are peeing in, while they're distilling their alcohol on the. It's just, I was horrified, and I couldn't believe that. You see pictures of Africa on TV and all that kind of stuff, but you're just not seeing the real story. So I thought that, well, what I can do is I can start putting water tanks into schools and connecting water to villages and putting in water wells. And we've also bought land for women's empowerment projects, because if the women are educated, we're going to get a better overview. And the other thing is to started a student sponsorship program. And a lot of people will tell me, why aren't you just putting girls through? Why they're boys? So it's about 40% boys. But if we just put girls through and no boys, the boys are uneducated, they're just going to treat the girls like crap at the other end anyway. So if they all go through together, hopefully we can make generational change. So that's a great example of failure being crap, and turning a crap initial outcome turning into a great outcome. And the other one was when I started Girls with Hammers. I had this fantastic idea. I mean, the other one, when I say the other one, there's probably 1,000, but I had this great idea that year 9 and 10 girls were sexualizing themselves, and they should know that they can be anything they want. They don't have to be doing this sort of stuff to please the boys, and stop fitting into stereotypes. I went into a couple of schools and they were like, nah, no thanks, you old fart, I'm just gonna keep doing what I want to. How would you know you're too old? They didn't say that, but they were just kind of like this look of, oh my God, who's this Nana, telling us what to do. Yeah. So that wasn't so great. But what we did a conference, and we thought, well, let's just do a conference and see who turns up. And what we found out is that all these women from 45 to 65 basically were coming, and they were searching for connection. They were searching for validation. They were searching for themselves to feel fantastic. And so there was this massive gap that we completely overlooked, but we found it because we failed in the school system. So there are only 2 of my failures. I can tell you what, there have been a bucket load, because I've got a habit of jumping in without thinking about it because I get so excited. But the moral, I guess, of the story is that, most often, in fact, from everyone I've heard, that are true dinks about it, is that when you have a massive failure, it leads to something that it should have been or could have been or would have been, that's so much better. So I think we just got to stop putting the blinkers on and saying, this is exactly what I want. You've got to have some flexibility and adaptability, and think about your why. Why are you doing this? And could another activity actually meet your why? Mine was to make a difference. Does it really matter if I do Skype or do water tanks? I'm making a difference. So that's a long answer, but it's a good one.
I love it. And personally, I have been to one of your conferences, and boy, oh boy, they are a bucket load of fun, so much energy, and you just leave the biggest smile on your face, which I'm sure stays plastered on for the next 24 hours. I love what you said about being adaptable and being innovative, because that's what it means to be an entrepreneur. You can't be fixed and set on your idea. You have to be able to pivot. But you have to be able to pivot if it makes sense. And that's where that feedback from failure comes from, is saying, okay, well, this is what I've learned. This is what I should do next. So I love that. So how important is courage when it comes to scaling your business to new heights? And do you believe that courage is a learned skill or something that we're born with?
Good question. Courage is a must. I don't care what anybody says. If you can't take courageous action, you are not going to achieve what you want to achieve, because most entrepreneurs have got their heart in their throat the whole time. It's what's this next thing I've got to do? Oh my gosh, I've got to do it. And it's, entrepreneurs are not, well, some are, but you're not just a smug, everything I touch turns to gold. Generally, there's so much fear in it, and it's kind of like, I have this idea and what if it's rejected? But you've got to take courageous action. You have to. And you've got to get friendly with courage. Courage doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It's just that the fear and the taking the deep breath and drawing the line in the sand and saying, oh, okay, I've got to do it. And when you do it, nobody killed you. Nothing bad happened. All the things that you had in your head, and sure, you might get rejected, but it's not you they're rejecting. And I think that's another thing. We don't take courageous action because we fear we're going to be rejected. But it's, if someone says no to your thing, there are a million reasons they're saying no. They're not just looking at you and going, oh, I don't like you. What they're doing is they're saying, well, I don't need that at this point in time. That thing doesn't solve my problem. I love the idea, but we're not ready for that yet. So they're saying all those other things in their head, and there's so many things behind a no. So I think that we just don't worry about that. Take the courageous action anyway. And besides, every no is one step closer to a yes. So just keep going. But are we born with it, or is it a learned skill? I believe we're all magnificent anyway. We're born, it's all in there. But can we access it, and are we just born with this natural talent? I don't think we're born with this natural expressiveness of courage. I may be wrong. You've just asked me and I'm thinking on the spot. But I think it's a learned skill, and I think that the more you do it, the better you become at it, the more you realise that the worst thing's not going to happen. We're still here. We're still coping. And this is part of my confidence program too, is that you can't, I always say, courage before confidence, courage over confidence every single time, because everyone says, oh, if I was confident, I wish I was confident. When I'm confident, if I had the confidence, it just goes on and on. You're never going to get confident without taking courageous action and practicing it over and over and over. You just can't. You just can't wake up one day and say, oh, I feel confident. You just can't do it. You've got to take courageous action to build confidence. And I think courage is everything. Courage is, I could go bang on about courage for years, but I'll just leave it there and say courage is a must.
Courage is a must. I love that. I used to say courage is a choice. Very similar. You have to choose to be that way. And it's just like reframing your mindset or becoming more positive. You can become more courageous in those small incremental steps. So I love that.
I think they're the same though. Courage is a choice, because you're going to choose. Yours comes first. I'm going to choose to be courageous, but then you must be courageous. Like if you're going to succeed, you're going to get anywhere, you must be. So I love the two of them together. I think they're great.
We'll trademark it, Kerryn. I love it. All right. So final question. So what's the number one piece of advice that you'd give to someone to help them get off the bench and into action to launch their business idea?
Start. I could just leave it at that. Just bloody start. But let's break it down really, really simply. Is just identify the first step. Put a paver down. I love this visual. I love visual things. Put a paver down. That's the first step. Step on that damn thing. Just step on it. And I think the biggest trap is we need to map it all out. We need to know every single action. It never works like that. I always say, keep your eye on the goal, know where you're headed. And that goal can move too, by the way. Your goalposts shift all the time. But that's about your why. Why am I going there? What's driving me there? And go in that direction. And you put one paver down and you step on it, even if you don't know what's next, even if you don't know, because I can 100% guarantee you, once you step on that, a whole lot of other opportunities open up. Decide which is right, put that paver down, step on it. Look at the next lot of things, put the paver, step on the damn thing. It's just start. If you don't take action, if you don't get moving, you're never going to get there. And don't be afraid to pivot. And I hate that word now. We used to love that word, and now it's just like, stop saying it. It's okay. And you're not a failure if you shift your idea. So stop trying to be perfect and have all the answers and get it exactly right, because when it launches, I need it to be perfect, because otherwise I'm going to look bad. And if it fails, I'm going to look bad. Forget it. Just work out where you're heading and start. Yeah.
I love it. I feel so energized. And look, it's something that we see as well as startup coaches, that we all have to know the whole big picture, and it becomes so overwhelming that you don't often know where to start because there's so much to do. So you have to break it down. You have to just do one thing, one easy thing. Even, it could be as simple as, registering your ABN, you know, and that's one step that you can take. So I absolutely love that advice, Kerryn. And we could get into a whole other gamut of perfectionism and everything else. But let's not go there because we're pushed for time. But Kerryn, it was an absolute pleasure to sit down with you today. I know for myself, I feel so inspired to leap into a new project just from these 20 minutes with you. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been fantastic.
Oh, it was awesome. And listeners, if you'd like to get in touch with Kerryn, you can reach out to her through her website, kerrynvaughan.com, or through her socials at Get Off the Bench, because I'm sure most of you would love to hear more about this confidence program that you are launching very soon. So that's all for today, folks. Be sure to tune into the next episode where I sit down with one of Startup Gippsland's own. Until then, keep dreaming big, taking action, following your entrepreneurial pursuits, and showing the world that the best ideas can come from the smallest of backyards.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Startup Gippsland Live. Please be sure to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the show, we'd love for you to leave us a review. We can't wait to have you tune in again soon. For more great resources and business tips, make sure you head over to our website, startupgippsland.com.au, your home for Gippsland entrepreneurs.